Hi class, let's start chapter 1. Okay, so in this chapter, we will be talking about operation management, and we'll do some introduction to operation management. The objective is define the term of operation management or OM and identify operation management jobs. We're also going to identify one of our objectives going to be identify the three major functional areas of organizations and describe how they are interact. Describe the scope of operation management and provide an overview, including differentiation between design, planning, control, and decision. We're going to compare production of goods and services, very important section. And we're going to discuss the operation manager's jobs, describe the key aspect of operation management decision making, briefly describe the historical of operation management and identify major trends that affect the operation management. The chapter of outline that we want to know is what is operation management or OM? And also we want to know the outline three basic functions within the organization. We'll talk about the scope of the operation management, differentiate the goods and services, operation manager jobs, and operation manager and decision making. What's the process? This is the outline, and we talk about the major trends plus the historical evolution of operation management. So, what is the operation management? OM is a management of process that create goods and or provide services. So it is operation is all about a process and procedures. So the OM is the management of the process and the procedures. So companies use operation management to improve their efficiencies and effectiveness. These are two things that operation management in charge of it. Efficiency means the operating to minimize the cost and time. And effectiveness is to achieve the intent goal, the quality and on time timeliness. Now, why we study operation management? Well, one of the because there is lots of opportunities in the operation management that we are not aware of them, and I hope in this class we will be introduced to this and their activities. There is opportunities. So a large percentage of company expenses occur in operation management areas. More efficient operations means more profit. You know, we are in the business to make profit, and we will bring some examples of that. A large number of old jobs are in operation management areas, actually, not in the other things, like the purchasing, like the quality, planning, scheduling, inventory, project management, they're all in operation. Activities in all other areas like finance, human resources, marketing are interrelated with the operation management activities. So operation management is kind of in the core and they are interrelated to them through that. Then the operation innovation leads to market place and strategic benefit. For example, in Toyota production system, we saw, and we'll bring some example of Honda also, Ford, how they do that. Dell's direct shipping, DHL shipping of personal computers. The career and the professional certification in operation management that you can pursue after this is Supply Chain Management Association, or SCMA, Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation. You can also be member of Canadian Supply Chain Sector Council, American Productions and Inventory Control Society, APICS, which is known now as the Association of Supply Chain Management, and the American Society for Quality, ASQ, Project Management Institute, very big part of the operation management, which is PMI, is a certification. So there is a lots of direction you can take to be certified in certain field, and all of them are interesting fields. So what's the function within the organizations? A typical organization, like manufacturing or a service, has a three basic functions. First is operation, finance, and marketing. Operation create goods and services, as we know. Finance provide fund and economic analysis of investment proposals. And the marketing is assess the customer wants and needs and communicate them to others, like to the operation, for example. So the organization, we said, is made of three parts: finance, manufacturing operations, which is part of manufacturing services, and marketing. And the marketing will be advising what's the demand for what kind of products or the operation will produce, and the operation will be financed by will finance the operation that tell them communicate what the fund is needed to deliver these products. So the basic function interact is the function must interact to achieve the goal and the objective of the organization. Each functional area makes an important contribution to the organization. So we know now operation, finance, marketing, but the major shares of the employees and the spending is in the operation. Let's look at, for example, in the airline, and this is only an introduction. So later on, we'll be focusing on each part of that, what we will be introducing now. For example, in the airline, you have the each, which is an operation, airline company. It's a marketing, there is a finance and accounting, and there is operation. Under the operation, we will see a flight operation, a ground support, facility management, and catering. So there is what you call an input, which is to get to the output, there is an input should go into the process. And the input could be building, labor, machine, materials, information. And then the transformation happening in the operation, and there is an output, could be good or services. During that process, there is always constant feedback between output and operation to adjust the product, and between input, which is the requirements, and the operation. So there is a constant, control between them to make sure the output meet the requirements. Let's bring an example. There is what you call an added value, our added value service, and we will bring an example of MVAS, mobile value added service, later on in the subject. Um, there is a stage of production. A farmer produce and harvest the wheat, for example. So the value added is, you know, it is, let's say, 15 cents. And then when the wheat gets transported to the mill, is usually the cost of the transportation, there is a value added to it, is 8 cents, so it becomes 23 cents, the value of the product, because there is an added value on it. Then you have the mill producing the flour, which is the costs there produce, and there is an value added. So you have to know one thing: we pay dollars for the values that we perceive. So it's the mediators, the suppliers, the processors. They will pay a dollar for the value that they receive to trade it. And the same thing with the customers and suppliers. So the flour mill transferred to the baker, and there is a added value in it is 8 cents, and then you have the product value of the product is 46. Um, Baker produced the bread, the process. It takes 10 cents. You appreciate the things with the 10 cents, so it becomes a dollar. Once the bread gets transferred to the groceries, it might be the value of $1.08. And the when their cost is and a dollar, there is a value of 1 8 cents. And the grocery store display this the sales spread. There is a cost of displaying manpower and everything, but they added a value on it, which is, let's say, 21 cents, so it becomes $1.20, and total value added is $1.29. When you go and purchase something at $1.29, you know that you're paying a dollars for the values. Let's say if it's $1.50, the bread, you see that the value of $1.50, it's worth that you're buying it because you're going to consume it or you reselling it at a higher price. So we trade value for with dollars for values. The transformation process, we look at the imports. Let's say the import for food process could be of the raw vegetables, could be the metal sheets, the water, the energy that we put in, the labor, the building, the equipment. These are all part of inputs. And there is a process which is we do cleaning for the raw vegetable, make cans, cutting, cooking, packing, and labeling. And then eventually we will have a canned vegetable. So the canned vegetables that you get it in the supermarket, there is input made of inputs and processes that you're gonna end up with that product. In the service side, the input is a little bit altered and different. And should be the input is the sick patient, the doctors, the nurses, the building, which is for the hospital, the medical supplies and drugs, the equipment and labor. And there is a process that's happening also. The process could be the examination you're doing it, the surgery you do, doctor is doing, the monitoring, the medication, the therapies. These are part of the process. And the end product is a healthy patient. It's the same thing applicable in education, same thing is applicable in the legal and the law. These are all type of service made of different parts of it, inputs, processes, and output. So actually, um, there is two things we said. There is a service and there is a product. And there is um, something in the middle, which is made of goods and service or made of service and good. There's always a product behind it. Could be a pure product like the ones you buy in Dollarama. And there is something called a service, a product, or behind it, the service is like the cars that you prefer to buy, cars that provide you good services. And there is a service behind it, a product. A best example, I always use it, is a IBM mainframe because they want to sell their um, services, implementation, and consultancies, or also the telco companies when they give you the mobile. And there is the pure service like surgery, teaching. So you notice here, surgery and teaching is mostly toward the services, songwriting, software development, partially good, mostly services, computer repair, restaurants, kind of more into services. Then you have the automobile and fast food, more goods. You start tilting, and you notice until you get the automobile assembly and still making is purely steel making is kind of also a good part of it. The types of operation, good producing, for example, we said, is like farming, mining, construction, manufacturing, power generations. And the part of the service is like a storage, transportations, like warehousing, trucking, mail, service, moving, taxi driving, buses, hotels, airlines, they're all into the service. And there is the sectors of exchange, which is retailing, wholesaling, banking, renting, I don't know, loans, in the entertainment, recording, television and radios, and communication could be newspaper, satellite, telephones. These are all in sectors of services, which is you need to do an operations for that. So basically, operation, as we said, interface with a number of supporting functions. So that if we look at the operation as a main core, operation, well, it's there is what you call interface with them. So they are interfacing with a product design to design a product. They're interfacing with logistics to move the products from the warehouse, from the suppliers to the end user to the product. And then you have the accounting, who does the accounting for them, MIS, management information system. They use the ITs, different type of ITs. We'll talk lots about ITs to see how the operation get the support from MIS. Then you have the purchasing, what they do for the inputs and the personal human resources, manpower needed to do these processing. Then you get the manufacturing engineering, how the setup of the machineries, how the move of the machineries, warehousing, and then you have the maintenance for these processing tools and machineries. So the scope of the operation management is two part of it, is design decisions, and then you have the planning control decisions. Design decision is done when you sit and do the capacities, they see the location where you're going to do it, and the equipment needed to deliver. Then you have the planning and control decision, which is personnel, how many people you need to produce these products, inventories, how much you need, scheduling, when you need it, when you're going to produce this, and the quality assurance. And each one of them will be talking in a detail, more detail based in the coming chapters. So in the coming chapters, basically what we are covering, first we're covering the forecasting in chapter 3, which is what will the demand be? We need to know the demand before we produce it. In chapter 4, we talk about the decision areas of the product and services, what customer want, how to improve the product and services, effective and efficient. And in chapter 5, we'll be covering the capacity, how much capacity will be needed. Keep in mind, operation and supply chain is kind of interfacing sometimes, and there are sometimes we need to speak about supply chains in order to cover the operations also. In chapter 6, also, we will be talking about layout, what process should be used. And chapter 7, we will talk about job design and work design and how to improve the work methodology and methods. And 9, covering the quality, how to define equality, what is quality means for us, and how we improve it. What's a benchmarking? Chapter 11, we will be talking about supply chain management here and which supplier to choose, and probably we're going to bring an assignment about that. And we'll talk about inventory management, how much to order, chapter 12, and chapter 13 will be covering how much capacity will be needed over the medium terms, which is aggregate planning, and then just in time GIT systems, how to coordinate production and purchasing, and scheduling, which is how to schedule jobs, staffs, and all these things. Which is decision is design type, and which is a planning and control type. That we will be the more we get deeper in this sentence, we will define those more, which sectors are. So what's a good versus services? We said there was a good, there was a service, there is a good behind it, it's a service, and there is a service behind it, it's a good. But if we look at the extreme part, we look at the difference between goods and services. Now, and the difference here in the goods, the output is tangible, you can feel it. The service, like teach a class, is intangible. It is, you know, it can be gone if there is no student. The customer contacts in goods is low. The customer contact, as you know, with the students is pretty high. Let's see. The example here for the goods is a car. The example for service is a class like what we have now. The labor content, the uniformities of input, it's high, very organized. What's the input, what's the output? Here is low in the classes. Labor content is low. There in teaching is high. Uniformity of output is in the car production is pretty high. In the services is low. The measurement of productivity is easy when you produce a car, whether it's moving or not, but in the education, it's very difficult. And the quality assurance is easy and good and difficult in teaching. But overall, there is different standards need to implement to figure out the quality of delivery, whether it's a goods or service. We have to separate these two from each other. So good and service, goods is tangible when you're producing, but when you're acting it is kind of a service. So most systems are, we said, is a blend of both goods and service. And service sector accounts for in Canada, it's more than 79%. It's pretty high. So there is this 80% chance or 79% chance after your graduation, you will be working in the service sectors of operation part of it. If we look at the historical part of it, the percentage of total labor forces by each industries. Here, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, mining, oil and gas, and then you get the manufacturing and construction, and then you have the service. And if you notice that the service, which is in the last one, is in comparison is very high. And as the country gets more advanced, you will notice that the service is gets much more higher than the other part of agriculture, and which is goods and goods and operation in goods. So the operation manager's job is the operation manager must coordinate the use of resources through the management activity of planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. That's his job or her job. Planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. In the planning, there is issues that he needs to take care of. It's like the capacity, the location, what kind of a mix of products is needed, a product production process, and the layout of it. Now that's part of the planning. Now when it comes to organizing, is the degree of centralization. He needs to, whether he needs to decentralize the process or centralize it. The department the subcontracting, whether you're subcontracting the supply side or the demand or part of the production, the suppliers, and the staffing. This is the organizing. But in a part of the directing is when you do a scheduling, issuance of a work order, you do a job assignment, dividing the job, and purchasing and logistics. And the job assignment is depend whether you're doing a linear matrix, they are different. And then it comes to the controlling, which is the last one of the fourth part, is which is inventory control, quality control, production pace, speed, motivation, and cost control. These are part of operation manager's job. There is a satisfaction in the operation jobs, and they have done a survey to find the a percentage of respondents highly satisfied. And we found out that the opportunities to improve efficiencies, which is big part of the operation, that's where the operation manager is feels very satisfied in it. There is an opportunity for innovations there, opportunity for personal initiative, operation management decision affecting the work. These are issues that is makes the operations management is very interesting. They can do a solving management problem, solving technical problems, operation representative in upper management, and they are status of operation. There are also physical work conditions, like it, don't like it, the hours of work, how many hours, and solving problems, personal problem, and dealing with the labor's difficulties. These are what highly satisfied percentage of respondents highly satisfied, what makes operation management managers satisfied. Now, operation management and decision making is made of a combination, and the combination of these, you cannot separate them, but you can pinpoint them. It's like there is a model, that is what you call the quantitative techniques. How many units will produce one unit? And there is an analysis of a trade-offs. What do you need to trade off? What subcontracting you do? That is what you have as what you call systematic approach or system approach. And then you have the establishing prior to which one is more important. And then we'll talk about ethics, which is they all compare to each other as a model, quantitative techniques, analysis of trade-offs, system approach, establishing priorities, and ethics. The model is abstraction of reality used to support the decision process. We know there is a physical existing products and manpowers and all these. There is a schematic way of approaching it, and there is a calculation that's happened between them, which is a mathematical approach to it, and a combination of them as a model of abstract of reality. So in the quantitative approach, which is what we said here, it is quantitative techniques or quantitative approach. There is what you call the linear programming. We'll talk about these on a detailed basis in down chapters. The linear programming, the queuing techniques, very important, especially in the service. The inventory techniques, how we can lower the cost of production. The project techniques, how we deliver a project, and we'll talk about project management, especially in the software, which is the most sophisticated one. And also, we'll talk about construction and the statistical techniques that we will use to understand the cases much better. In a case of analysis of trade-off, decision on the amount of inventory to stock. When you do an increased cost of holding inventory, because you need to hold inventories, but how much of it you need to hold it versus of the customer services. These are the things that you need to do a trade-off efficiency versus effectiveness. Basically, you need to establish the priority, and there is what you call a Pareto phenomena. It's a factor account for a high percentage of occurrence of some of it. And we use this mostly in the disaster recoveries, but it's called 80-20 rules, which is 80% of the problem caused by 20% of the activities. So 20% of the activity might cause 80% of the problem, and the rest of the activities, if it goes into field of process and procedures, standard routine process, then that does not matter. But how do we identify these vital fews, which is we will be learning in the coming slides and chapters. Now, when it comes to the ethical issues, we always comes to a questions like a financial statement, and we want to probably, usually if you heard of FIFO first in first out or LIFO last in first out, that makes a big difference in the financial statement. The operation, there is the ethical issue, how they supposed to present the operation into financial statement, because according to the previous year, you will be financed accordingly sometime. The work safety, are you having a hazard, which is a very bad for organization if you're not doing that? A product safety, the quality of the product, the environment that you need to juggle, the community that you're dealing with, and hiring and firing workers definitely is a very important, because you don't want to have the morale up and down, going up and down. But today, in the trends in the business is the internet and e-commerce. So we work a lot on the internet and e-commerce, and we will be bringing some example like a CRM and business intelligence to find out more about, and probably some application for warehousing, also operations of warehousing. There is a management technologies. There is something issues got to do with the globalization and trade for and buying from a suppliers from overseas or local. The management of supply chain, how it's happening. For example, we bring one of the highest process, how it's happening between in Ford Canada and Ford USA, or Honda Japan and Honda Canada, and sustainabilities, some examples of sustainabilities. But in the supply chain part of it, a sequence of activity and organization involved in producing and delivering of a good service. We have a tendency to see we brought a bread at $2.58, and this is the value we take for it. But there is a process that we brought as an example, and we saw that's the part where it's a 50-cent value delivery, which is 16 to then flour mills and the process until it becomes a flours and produce breads, and the breads comes to the supermarket where you come and pick them up. So its summary of this chapter is basically what we learn about is the fact that um, operation management is responsible for planning and coordinating the use of the organization resource to convert the input into output. Operation function is one of the three primary function of organization. The other two, which is they are the marketing and finance. So we have operation, marketing, and finance. The operations function is present in a both service and good producing organizations. Operation decision involve designing, decision, and planning and control. Decision. Designing decision, we said, is related to the capacity planning, product designing, process designing, layout of facilities, and selecting location for facility. On the other hand, the planning and control decisions relate to the quality assurance, a production planning, scheduling and control, inventory management, and project management. Service differs from goods by now. So the service differs from the good production in a customer contact and labor content. Lack of inventories, variation in inputs and outputs, and difficulties in the productivity measures and quality insurance. We talked about the samples of cars and sample of teaching. The operation manager plan, control, organize, and direct the operation of an organization. They use models, quantitative techniques, trade-off analysis, system approach, priority, and ethics in the decision making. The operation management involved through craft, mass, and lean production system, which we will be talking about, especially in the case of lean production system a lot. And the major trend currently we know is B2B, B2C, or and C2C. These are all available, which is a major trend currently are e-commerce, technology's effectiveness, globalization, the supply chain, and the sustainabilities. So what we have learned, we were able to define the term of operation management and describe what an operation manager might do. We identified the three measures, function, area of organization, and describe how they are interact with each other. And we were able to differentiate between design and operation decision. What's a design? What's an operation decision? Compared a good versus services, and each one has a different operation style. Describe the key aspect of operation manager job and their role and involvement in the decision making. And we briefly describe the historical part of it. And we identify the current trend, which is with the technologies and e-commerce and globalization, part of the new trend in this thing. So by this, we finish the chapter. Thank you.